Angie,
John,
do you think of yourself as a digger?
of you, of course, I absolutely dig you.
Of course you do, but that's not where I'm heading with this. So we know how important it is to deep dive with clients, but how do you keep that going with someone who's a bit more long term as a client?
Oh, in the sessions. That, my dear, is probably a great topic for today's episode.
Yeah, I agree. Shall we do it?
Absolutely. Let's dig into this.
Welcome to the Coaching Clinic with John and Angie.
The show for professional coaches who want to develop their skills and grow their business.
Follow the show on your favorite podcast app.
And join us every Wednesday for new episodes.
So, what happens when you've had someone as a client for a long time and you want to make sure that you keep going, doing the deep work with them?
Yeah, I think it's something that a lot of coaches don't really think about. If you're newer to coaching, you're not even worried about that yet. It hasn't even shown up on your radar. But for me, as an experienced coach, I had clients that I've worked with for years and years. And I think that it's just that idea, right? Once you get past the surface, the superficial things, and that could take so many sessions. It's not, oh, we got past that in session one. I think that a lot of people struggle to still find the nuggets because that's what they become. I think you start out with these bigger rocks, boulders, even maybe, but once you've been doing it for a minute, it becomes, oh, wait, where are we going with this? How do we keep going? How do we keep bringing that?
Yeah, I feel like it's easier in some ways to do the deep dives with a longer running client unless you've fallen into bad habits where you haven't been doing that or where you've maybe had a long period of not doing that. And perhaps it has fallen into, okay, don't say this to judge anyone because I think I've done it myself. I'm almost certain I have.
Sure.
But it ends up falling into more conversational, almost like they're paying to have a phone call with a friend each week. If that's what they
Mhm.
want to get out of it, then no problem. But it's probably not. We couldn't really call that coaching. It's more maybe emotional support, perhaps even counseling to that degree, or paid
Exactly.
friendship, which
Sure.
isn't really what we're about. But for the most part, you've already done the work on getting deep with them. You should be easier to take them to those places because the trust is already there, and to go deeper. If you haven't been doing those things, it's probably better to approach it from the way you would with a new client, to start reestablishing the same methodologies to get you back into that habit of being able to go deeper with them and challenge them a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think the whole thing is in order to be able to do it, I think you have to be much more reflective on your sessions. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be doing that from the beginning, but I feel like in the beginning, naturally and organically, more information is there for you to decipher and go through and dig into and all of that. But I think in terms of approach and creating a skill set or a habit, even, you really do. You have to be able to evaluate and ask yourself to what you just said. Was this just a friendly conversation? Or was I really still digging with them? Because I absolutely know several people who are coaches who just love that it's a comfortable, and we talked about this very recently, but they love the comfort of the longevity, the familiarity of the relationship. And sometimes you get lost in that. You forget, oh, you know what? I'm really supposed to be challenging them. How do I do that? So I think the first thing is to always be self-reflective, right? As a coach, you should be able to evaluate the session and look at it, but you also need to evaluate yourself and say, what did I really do great in this session today? Or where could I have gone deeper when this came up? You have to do that as a coach. You cannot just go, all right, check that box, session number 38, done. And if you're lucky enough to still be working with somebody, right? So I think for me, that's the first step
Yeah.
is to do that evaluation of the session and of you
Yeah.
as a coach, some self-reflection there. Why are you laughing?
I just want to tell you something about there was a client I had for at least 10 years as a client,
Mm,
which is an exceptionally long time to have a client for.
yeah.
Not the only client that I've had for that sort of time period as well, but pretty much every session was just him telling me what he's been up to.
Okay.
And yeah, so it really was the case. So it wasn't like that's just how we run the sessions. It was me saying to him early on, what do you actually want to get out of these sessions? His words to me were, I was told I need to have a coach to be successful. So you're my coach. I'm like, okay,
Okay.
but that's really, we need to actually do some coaching as well. And he's, look, all I really want to do is come in and check in with you, tell you what I've been up to, and make my plans and make my commitments. And that's it. I'm like, okay, it's super easy, but I can honestly say we never went deep on those calls. We never went deep about anything, but that's what he wanted. And to a degree, I'm in my head is, if that's what you're paying for and that's what you really want to get, and you're finding some value to this, okay, it's not really what
Yeah.
I want to be doing as a coach. Not one of my favorite coaching experiences, as it were, but super easy. And I was like, all right, I'll take your money. But it's probably not what we want. It's
We
probably not
do
what we
not
want.
endorse, I'll take your money.
It's probably not what you really want in a coaching relationship. It's not that fulfilling for you as coaching work, even if they're paying you for the privilege. It was just very easy to do that. And it's like, if I had said I don't really want to coach like that, he would have just been assigned to another coach.
Yeah. Well, to
That's
your
how it
point,
is
though,
with sometimes in the coaching companies.
it definitely is. And to John's point on that, though, just by the way, you know what? Sometimes when you get on with a client, they want to give you the rundown. They want to, because that's their brain dump, right? So sometimes they get on and I will allow, hey, how was your week? What went on this week? I will ask that question. Not because I'm like, hey, how are you? Like, how's the kitten? Maybe, sorry, if they have like animals and somebody, I actually had somebody recently whose animal got sick and I'm like, how's the puppy? And so, of course, I checked in. But the point that I'm making is you want to be able to do that. Give them an opportunity to let that stuff go because there's nuggets in it. But I also put parameters. I do not let that go on for more than about 5 minutes. And then I might say, okay, so John, let me ask you. And then maybe piggyback from something that came up in a previous session, or your wife irked you, or you were sick. How's your energy? What are you doing? It's not just how are you? It's, oh, so you were really sick with the flu. What are you doing for self-care? You have to be able as a coach to take almost any situation and inject coaching into it. But of course, not to the point of nauseum either, where somebody's are you like, hello, I am still human. But I think the other differentiation is I think there needs to be patience because I think in the beginning of the relationship, as long as you're not just there to take their money, like John, no, I'm teasing. I'm only kidding. I am only kidding. That will be a deleted part of this, I'm sure. That will not make it to air. However, I'm just kidding. But the point is, I think that in the beginning, there's naturally so much more that you don't have to do the search. But
Yeah.
there's a lot there. But as you progress, it gets like, how do I want to articulate this? You have to be patient as a coach as well and understand that as time progresses and the deeper you go, you're not always going to find the nuggets as easily, which is why it's so important to keep digging, right? So you may not have, in the beginning, they may have these aha moments every session, maybe. Great for you if that
Yeah.
happens. But I'm not saying that's true.
Yeah, no,
It
I
will.
would.
But
Yeah, I would never set up a coaching relationship now that would allow that to go on. This is very much a coaching clients being assigned to you situation, and you pretty much have to
yeah.
give them what they want. But for my own business, for my own clients, that's not
Mhm.
going to happen because they're going to be selected, and we're going to have done
Sure.
discovery before we ever get to that point. But even then, when you've been working with someone a bunch of times, one of the things that does make it easier, I think, is that it's easier to challenge because they expect it of you, and the permissions become implicit. You probably do
Yes.
reach a point where you don't need to keep asking for permission to challenge them or call them out. You can just do it and be comfortable with it. It's fine.
Oh, yeah. Listen, when you and I have conversations, right? And John and I have certainly developed a friendship and a relationship and an understanding of each other. And then sometimes out of left field, he'd be like, what are you going to do about that? And I'm like, you're coaching me. So it is that familiarity where you sometimes, as the client, they don't expect it to, it's not, they don't realize it's coming. But even as a friend, John still keeps that mindset of who he is, right? And will come out and say, hey, what about this? And call me out and say, oh, I didn't even really think about that, because it's just naturally who he is. But as a coach, if you do have the benefit of that relationship and that being familiar, you should absolutely be more in tune to them so that you can listen for what's also not being said. I think that's another great opportunity with longevity, is because you become familiar enough that you can say, wait a minute, something is missing here. Let me go to that, because we didn't even talk about it, but I feel like it's hiding here somewhere. So you actually have to be more aware too. You have to be much more in tune to get to that point.
I think so. And I think you also need to know whether they have complete life areas that they really don't pay
Yeah.
or seem to pay attention to or don't want to touch on in the coaching sessions. As coaches, we should pretty well know our wheel of life, right? We know what the main categories are for working with clients, the main life areas are in life coaching, at least. And even if we're a business coach, we probably should know what they are. Because coaching does have all these holistic elements to it, if there's a really key element of somebody's life that they're just not even willing to bring up, or you try and subtly bring it up and they try and steer the conversation away, you do have to gauge whether it is your job to dig deeper on that. And probably do need to ask, is this something you just don't want to talk about with me? Or
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
there something going on here that maybe we should talk about?
Yeah, listen, I think that's really important too. Is it's we're talking about your leadership, or we're talking about, how you behave at home or whatever. And you do, as a coach, you have to be able to have some kind of bird's eye viewpoint of them very early on. I don't know if you do this, John, but I do ask them about family and things like, so tell me a little bit about you now. Tell me, let's be personal for a good 15 minutes. Are you married, divorced? Children, where do you live? And I have their addresses, obviously, if they're clients already, but so tell me about that. And I even ask them sometimes about their home. Like, how do you feel about your home? Do you love, and again, sounds a little, what do you care? I'm here for leadership. What do you care about my house? But I look to gain as much of a visualization of their entire world as I possibly can in the beginning, so that
Yeah.
I'm visually seeing it. I work that way. I'm very visual. So I'm always looking at things in that way. But I think it's a good point that what's what they say about working out? I don't know. Like, you can't, what is it? You can't focus on one muscle and think it's going to work. Like, you can't, oh, I can't remember what it is. Probably shouldn't have brought it up.
You probably shouldn't have, because my mind's going to places that I can't talk about on the podcast. But
Good morning.
good morning. Look, I think I don't know where the workout analogy is going, but I do think that the categories of our life are not so compartmentalized that they don't bleed over into each other. They do.
Right.
Life is a big messy hole that we can categorize, but this is a general coaching principle you may have heard before, probably, that if most parts of your life are actually pretty good or even amazing, but one part of your life, one key life
Mm-hmm.
area of yours sucks, you're going to feel like crap because of that, because it will bring everything else down.
Mm-hmm.
It will bring you down, that you've got this one area of your life that you just can't seem to get a handle of. I think I used to, early years ago, used to use the example of Madonna on coaching calls, like so successful in all these
Really?
big areas of her life, so successful in all these areas of her life, but relationships for Madonna always seem to be a big problem, and something that, no matter how
Maybe
successful
you
she was
should
with everything
upgrade that
else,
to J-Lo.
we could take our pick of celebrities that seem to have relationship issues, right? This is the thing of, even if you're mega multi-million selling artist and world famous and life looks like success on every level, but your relationships suck, it's going to make you feel like crap. And you're going to feel like there's one thing that's missing from your life that you just can't get a handle on. And it makes everything else feel like crap as well. So we want to have all areas of our life being as good as possible, which means we need to pay attention to all of these different areas of
Sure.
our lives as well. And so
Yeah.
we need to have the context. And that's kind of what you're saying. We need to have the context of what is going on for you at home, what is going on for you at work. To tell me a bit about who's around and what's around you and all those kinds of
Sure.
things. It gives us more context to work with, the life that you are living, rather than just the words that you tell us for what you want to talk about on your coaching call.
Yeah. Did you ever have that happen? Did you ever work with a client for like an extended period of time? And somewhere, again, I'm gonna why 38's coming up today, but somewhere in session 38, they say something like, I don't know. I had a few different situations happen. I'll use a very extreme one where a client shared that they had lost a child. And I literally was so dumbstruck by the statement. And it was so matter of fact when I lost my son. And I was like, literally the screeching halt in my mind. And I said, whoa, pause there for a minute, because I was feeling all the feels, right? I was like, wait, what? What did they just say? And I needed clarification because I wanted to make sure that the loss of the child was actually what I thought. And so I was like, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? And they sounded so matter of fact. But I was like blown away. And they're like, oh, yeah, like right before I started working with you 38 sessions ago, which is a long time, by the way, not always within a year. Sometimes it takes over a year to get to that point. And I was like, and in my head, I was thinking, where in the heck was this information in the beginning? But I also realized, right, in that moment, people don't generally disclose up front the areas that are the most painful, or sometimes they don't even realize it. To your point too, sometimes we don't realize how affected we actually are by the imbalance of happiness and fulfillment in areas of our life. But that was like a pretty big moment. And it happened within the last 7 years of me being a coach. And it was still a very eye-opening like conversation or even experience, because they didn't want to talk about it. And I said, I'm going to respect that for today. That's what I said, for today, because I'm sure they didn't mean to say it because it had been the secret, but it became a huge part of, like, I saw things so much more clearly. I was like, oh, that makes sense. But so did you ever have that happen where something came up, and obviously maybe not that extreme, but like you're thinking, was this information in day one?
Yeah. Yeah. There's one example that comes to mind, which was a guy I was coaching. Again, things seemingly going really well in life, marriage seemed to be going well, family, all that, career as a speaker actually was going really well. I'm not going to give much more information than that, but not that it would make him identifiable, but you get a sense as a coach when there's something underlying that you haven't got to yet. And I wouldn't say it took us 38 sessions. I think it might have been at least 6 months though, before we got to this of him getting to a point where me challenging and saying, I feel like it's something deeper here.
Yeah.
And that was around the time he decided it was the right time for him to come out as gay, and that he had been denying
Oh,
this huge part
okay.
of his life. So it was a really huge thing.
Mm.
It's not the kind of thing that you really can push someone, nor should you try and push someone to come out. They have to do it when they're ready to do it. But it's okay to have that sense and to maybe dig around it rather than right at it. And we can at least dig like an archaeological dig with this, or you dig around the artifact
Absolutely.
that you find, you start to uncover it, but it's still hidden away under a layer of dirt because
Yeah.
it'll be revealed in its own time, and you don't want to interfere with it. So that's the thing. That was a huge leap forward for him. Obviously, completely
Mm.
transformed his life. I think his life was 12 months later. I got a message. We weren't still working together, but I got a message from him that his life was really good. He was in a relationship with a guy now, and I don't think the breakup with his wife went all that well. But yeah,
Listen, it
big,
gets
big.
messy, and we all fear the messy. And I think another point is, if you're actually thinking about, how do I do this really? How do I really do this digging that you guys are talking about? And I think that sometimes we always talk about listen for what's not being said. I think people have gotten that, but I also pay very close attention when they're like, oh, this is great. My job is great. The kids are great. My spouse is great. My health is great. I will literally call out in a very positive way. All right, wait. So let's go to the spouse or something maybe we haven't talked about as often, and say, tell me what's so great about that. I'd love to know. I'm going to tell you that has been one of my biggest, I almost feel like it's a hammer. If you're doing a dig, sometimes you have to use those specific tools. It's like somebody working in your mouth, and it's like somebody coming and going, oh, I'm using this dental instrument to all of a sudden it feels like a hammer in your mouth. It's very extreme and very scary and uncomfortable. But that is usually a great segue for me when somebody is, I ask, so tell me about your marriage and tell me about, and they go, oh, it's this.
No,
Tell
absolutely.
me about that.
Absolutely that.
So you
Yeah,
don't have to
and you're
call
giving me
people out in a
giving me
negative, right? What?
you're giving me flashbacks to my dental appointment this morning.
Oh,
So
I'm
thanks for
sorry.
that.
I
Oh,
didn't
I know.
know.
I wondered if you had gone back and listened to my episode on toxic positivity that I did, but no, it doesn't necessarily relate to that. I think you're right. It's deflection. It's like when people keep making jokes about, or you're trying to approach a serious topic and they keep batting it off with humor. It's a defense
Yeah,
mechanism. It's a
sure.
protection mechanism because they don't want you to go there. It's almost like putting the sort of warning lights outside saying, don't go there, don't go there. I'm going to push you away every time you try to. So if I tell you it's wonderful, you're not going to go there because it's wonderful. You should still go there. Like nothing in any area of your life is going to be so wonderful it couldn't be improved upon, because there's always room for growth. And if we're not growing in any part of our lives, we're going the other way. We're regressing, and entropy is not an
being
attractive thing.
stagnant
So
isn't just as bad as going backwards. Absolutely. I think there's this other point that this other piece that I use too. And if somebody, depending on what it is, I had a client who had an abusive alcoholic partner and very much was like, and just an enabler 101, right? I was there too, and it turned into this thing. And oh, you're at a party and it turned into this. But I should know better. As soon as I heard that, I knew that it was like something that was recurring. I should have known better. And I was like, oh, why? Tell me why. Why should you have known better? It's when it's happened in the past. And I'm like, okay, red alert. There's flags going up all over the place. So I knew that in this particular dig, I actually had to put the gloves on. This was going to be very sensitive and delicate. And I needed to get the finest of instruments out to be able to coach this person and make sure I wasn't falling or slipping inadvertently into therapy, which, by the way, many months later, I did convince this person. I think that this needs to happen because it was ongoing and it was problematic. It wasn't a good situation. So anyway, point that I'm making is you really do have to control your information, know when to tread lightly. And I don't know, did you ever, as a coach, John, did you ever just stay away from a topic like for the whole coaching relationship?
yeah, because when I did try and broach it, and I think on one client in particular with this, and I do think there were probably issues around sexuality or sexual identity. I'm not necessarily saying that they were gay or bi, and that it may have actually been asexuality in this particular instance or something like that. I don't know 100%, but relationships was just not somewhere he wanted to go. And when I did challenge that in a really nice way, and it was just not an area that he wanted to focus on or talk about at all. At least not in intimate relationships. Friendships, great, but close intimate relationships was not somewhere that he wanted to go on the calls. And so I had to agree that was the case, and that maybe at some point it will come up, but it's not something I'm going to push.
So listen, and I think that to wrap up the topic, because we've given some good tidbits today and some great practices on how to do it. I also do think that, and you know me, I'm very direct. I am a digger, but I also know my place. Right? I do not have the right as a coach to intrude where I am actually not welcome. And I may not know the reasons why. And if I do dig and I do get more direct and even push a little bit, pull, poke, prod, whatever, and I'm still getting that resistance, I need to check myself and say, you know what? I have to be respectful of this person. So there is also a line to draw for yourself as a coach and say, you know what? I have to stop. This is the place.
Yeah.
To your point.
Yeah, look, we're talking about digging, not bulldozing, right? We do not want to bulldoze. We don't want to push them into something that they're not ready for yet, just because we want to coach them or we want to challenge them or feel like we're doing that. Is like, you do not have to be the provocative coach on every single situation.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to allow and create and hold the space for vulnerability and psychological safety so that when they're ready, they
Absolutely.
can, and you can lead them towards that. So yeah, I think that's great.
And you can
A
leave
good
it
point.
like that with them, though. You could
Yeah.
say, you know what, when you're ready, we can come back to this. And you may never be ready. Just be respectful and you will gain so much more trust with them.
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome.
I think that's a much healthier coaching relationship to have. I'm sure you
Yeah.
hope you do too. That's pretty much it for the coaching clinic for this time, and we'll look forward to seeing you on another episode very soon.
Do you have a question for the coaching clinic?
Reach out on LinkedIn to connect with Angie and John.
Leave us a voicemail or video message and we will feature you on the show.
You can also leave up to 90-second voicemail for free on www.speakpipe.com/the Coaching Clinic podcast.
We'd love to hear from you.
See you next time.
Bye for now.